They say smell is the strongest trigger of memory. For me, it will always be two smells. The first, of coffee and fresh paint on a Sunday morning. The second, of burning oil and death. December 7th, 1941, started like any other Sunday on the USS Arizona. I was a seaman, an anti-aircraft gunner. That morning, I was writing a letter home to my parents in Ohio, telling them about the beautiful Hawaiian weather, the blue waters of the harbor. I was 19 years old, and the world was an adventure. We had just finished breakfast. The mess deck smelled of coffee, bacon, and the faint, ever-present odor of fuel oil. It was a comforting smell, the smell of home, because the ship was our home. I was on deck, leaning against the bulkhead, finishing my letter, when I first heard the drone. We all heard it, but it was Sunday, a peaceful Sunday. We thought it was just more Army Air Corps exercises. Then I saw them, coming low over the hills, a formation of planes, but unlike any I had seen before. They were sleek, and they were heading straight for us. I remember seeing the red circles on the wings, clear as day, and my mind, it just refused. It couldn't process what it was seeing. The first bomb hit near the number 4 turret. The sound wasn't just loud, it was a physical force that punched you in the chest. The deck beneath my feet shuddered like a living thing in agony. Then came the chaos. The general quarters alarm sounded, a frantic screaming bell that was almost drowned out by the explosions and the staccato rhythm of machine guns. "Japs! We're being attacked by the Japs!" someone screamed, his voice cracking with the terror we all suddenly shared. Smoke began to billow thick and black, stinging my eyes and choking my lungs. The once clear sky was filled with a hellish circus of diving planes, tracers, and the ugly black puffs of our own ack-ack fire. It was too little, too late. We were sitting ducks, tied up in port. I ran to my battle station, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The world had narrowed to this: the heat of the metal under my hands, the taste of fear like copper in my mouth, the deafening roar. And then it happened. The world ended. A bomb, I later learned, must have pierced our deck and detonated the forward magazine. The explosion was not something you heard. It was something you became. It was a white-hot, all-consuming force that swallowed sound, light, and thought. The entire forward part of the ship seemed to lift out of the water. A fireball of unimaginable intensity rolled over us. I was thrown backwards, my body slamming against a gun mount. The concussion sucked the air from my lungs. For a moment, there was only a high-pitched ringing in my ears and a strange, peaceful silence. Then the screams started. I looked forward, where the front of my ship, my home, had been. There was now a twisted, burning inferno. The mast was collapsing. Men were on fire, stumbling, jumping into the water that was itself beginning to burn, coated with fuel oil from our ruptured tanks. The air was so thick with heat, it seared my throat with every breath. I saw things no 19-year-old kid from Ohio should ever see. My friends, the men I had joked with just hours before, were gone, vaporized. I don't remember deciding to abandon ship. It was an instinct, a primal urge to escape the furnace. I climbed over the side, the railing hot enough to blister my hands, and slid down a line into the water. The water was warm, but it was also on fire. Patches of burning oil surrounded me. I swam, desperate, trying to dive under the flames, coming up for gasps of air that were half smoke. I thought I was dead. I was sure of it. Then a hand grabbed the collar of my shirt. I was hauled, coughing and vomiting salt water, into a motor launch from another ship, the USS Dobbin. The faces of the sailors on that boat were masks of shock and horror, mirroring my own. As we pulled away, I looked back at the Arizona. She was a tomb, settling into the mud of the harbor, a column of black smoke rising from her like a funeral pyre, marking the grave of over 1,000 of my shipmates. I sat there, shivering in the tropical heat, wrapped in a coarse blanket that smelled of diesel and another man's sweat. I had come to the Navy to see the world. On December 7th, I saw it end. And in that moment, I knew, with a certainty that froze my soul, that the boy from Ohio was gone forever. All that was left was a ghost, saved from the fire, but forever haunted by it.
They sent us survivors to a temporary barracks. For weeks, we were ghosts. We ate, we slept, we stared at walls. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? We all had the same nightmare playing behind our eyes. The Navy, in its infinite wisdom, decided the best cure was to get us back to sea. They broke us up, scattered us to different ships like seeds in the wind. I was assigned to a new Fletcher-class destroyer, the USS Caslin. She was fresh from the shipyard, all sharp lines and gray paint, smelling of newness instead of death. I boarded her with a duffel bag that felt heavier than it was. My soul was a numb, cold weight. The first person I met was Joe Boston Rizzio. He was swabbing the deck with a vigor that seemed almost offensive. He had a thatch of black hair, a grin that took up half his face, and he talked. My God, how the man could talk. "You the new fish, the Pearl Harbor guy?" he asked, not even looking up from his mop. "Tough break, kid, but this here's the Caslin. She's a lucky one, you'll see, I can feel it. Name's Rizzio, but you can call me Boston. Everyone does." I just grunted. I wasn't in the mood for lucky ships or cheerful talkers. He didn't take the hint. That was Boston. He was a force of nature. He'd follow me around, telling stories about his family's bakery in the North End, about his 5 sisters, about the time he tried out for the Red Sox. He was a loader on one of the 5-inch guns, and his hands were as quick as his mouth. At first, I hated it. His noise was a violation of the silence I felt I owed the men I'd lost. But he wore me down. You can't share a steel box 100 yards long with a human hurricane and not get caught in his breeze. He'd save me a piece of fruit from his rations, or a precious bar of chocolate. He'd drag me into card games I didn't want to play. Slowly, without me even noticing, the ice around my heart began to crack. Life on a destroyer is a world away from a battleship. It's tighter, faster, more intimate. You know every man's face. The Caslin became my new home. Not a replacement for the Arizona, but something different, a refuge. And Boston became my anchor. He was the loud, profane, loyal heart of our little world. He taught me how to laugh again, a sound that felt foreign in my own throat. Our first real action came in the Coral Sea. It wasn't a surprise this time. We had radar, we had warning, but nothing prepares you for the sight of a swarm of Japanese dive bombers against the sky. They looked like angry insects, growing larger by the second. The general quarters alarm was no longer a shock, but a grim summons. I was at my gun. The world dissolved into a cacophony of roaring guns, the sharp ping of brass casings hitting the deck, and the frantic shouts at a gun captain. The ship heeled over violently as the skipper threw her into evasive maneuvers. Boston was next to me, his face a mask of concentration, his hands a blur as he fed shells into the breach. There was no fear in his eyes, only a fierce, focused energy. "Come on, you sons of bitches," he'd yell at the sky with every round we fired. "That's for the Arizona," he muttered once, after we saw a plane stagger and trail smoke. A near miss sent a geyser of water over the deck, drenching us all. For a second, my mind flashed back to Pearl, the fire, the screams, the feeling of helplessness. I froze. My hands locked on the training wheel. Boston didn't miss a beat. He slammed the new shell home, then shoved me hard with his shoulder. "Hey, Ohio, you sleeping? We got work to do." That shove, that stupid nickname, snapped me back. This wasn't Pearl. We weren't tied to a dock. We were fighting back. I looked at Boston, at the sheer, defiant life in him, and I felt something stir inside me. Not just the will to survive, but the will to fight, to protect this new family, this loudmouth baker from Boston who had decided I was worth saving. We survived that battle. The ship was intact, we were intact. As we stood down, covered in sweat and cordite, Boston clapped me on the back. "See? Told you she was a lucky ship." I finally managed a real smile. It felt strange on my face, like using a forgotten muscle. He was wrong. It wasn't the ship that was lucky. It was me. The war had taken one family from me, and in its infinite, cruel irony, had given me another. And I knew, with a certainty as deep as the ocean beneath us, that I would do anything, to keep this one safe.
The Coral Sea was a baptism. What followed off Guadalcanal was a descent into pure, unadulterated hell. They called it Iron Bottom Sound for a reason. Every night, the Tokyo Express would run down the slot, Japanese destroyers and cruisers, sleek and deadly, to reinforce their troops on the island. And we'd be there, our little tin can of a destroyer, waiting for them in the dark. The darkness there was a physical thing. It was thick, heavy, broken only by the faint phosphorescence of the waves and the distant, menacing silhouettes of islands. You could smell the jungle, a damp, rotten sweetness, even miles out to sea, and you could feel the fear. It was a low current running through the ship, through every man aboard. It was during one of those pitch-black nights that we got what Boston later called the Fool's Order. We were operating as a radar picket, the eyes of the fleet, stationed dangerously far ahead. Our radar had picked up a large surface contact closing fast. The Tokyo Express was coming to dinner, and we were the appetizer. Standard doctrine was to report, lay smoke, and get the hell out. Let the big boys, the cruisers, handle it. But the order that came from the bridge was different. Engage. Just one word. A death sentence. A collective groan went through the ship. You could feel it in the deck plates. Our skipper, a good man usually, was under pressure from higher up. "We're to delay them at all costs," came the follow-up over the ship's comm. "Delay them?" Boston muttered next to me at the gun mount, his voice a low growl. "With what? Harsh language and 5-inch pop guns? They've got long lances." The long lance. The Japanese torpedo. Faster, longer ranged, and deadlier than anything we had. It was the stuff of nightmares. We were just sailors. Our job wasn't to question, but to do. So we did. The world exploded into a chaos of fire and noise. Our guns flashed, momentarily blinding us. The Japanese ships returned fire, their shells throwing up great columns of water around us, close enough to drench the decks. The sea was a maelstrom. The ship shuddered violently as a near-miss concussion rocked her. Then came the sound we all dreaded, the high-pitched whine of incoming shells that you know are meant for you. One hit forward. The explosion was a deafening roar of tearing metal. The ship lurched, lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim red of battle lanterns. Acrid smoke poured from the forward stack. Damage reports started crackling over the intercom, voices strained with panic and pain. Then a new sound, a different kind of explosion, deeper, more visceral. A torpedo. It had hit us aft, on the port side. The Castellan jerked like a wounded animal, listing sharply. The order came to abandon forward magazine, flood compartments. Over the chaos, I heard a different cry. It was Boston's voice, but stripped of all its usual bravado. It was raw, sharp with pain. "Eddie, my leg! I'm pinned!" My blood ran cold. He was in the handling room below our gun mount, where the shells were passed up. The hit must have warped the hatch or dropped something heavy. In the smoke and the red light, I saw him. A piece of twisted deck plating had his leg trapped. Water was already sloshing around his ankles. The ship was listing further. We were going down. The order to abandon that section was clear, but leaving him wasn't an order I could follow. The world narrowed to that red-lit compartment, the rising water, and my friend's face, pale and clenched in agony. "Hold on, Boston," I yelled, sliding down the ladder. "Get out of here, you idiot! That's an order! You're not my CO, you're a baker from Boston!" I shouted, grabbing a crowbar and wedging it into the metal. I heaved, my back screaming in protest. The metal groaned,
but didn't budge. The water was at his waist now. The ship groaned around us, a dying leviathan. I heaved again, a desperate primal scream tearing from my throat. Something gave way, just enough. I pulled him free, his leg a bloody mess. He cried out in pain as I hauled him over my shoulder in a fireman's carry. I stumbled through the smoke-filled passageway, the deck tilting at a crazy angle, the sounds of the battle still raging outside. We made it to the rail as the order to abandon ship was finally given. We went into the warm, oil-slicked water together. We clung to a piece of wreckage, watching as the Castellan, our home, our lucky ship, slipped beneath the dark waves. Around us, other men splashed, calling out in the night. Boston, shivering from shock and pain, looked at me. "You stupid, stubborn Ohio farm boy," he coughed, but his hand gripped my arm like a vice. He should have left me. I just held on tighter to the debris and to him. The Navy fought for flags and strategies. The admirals gave orders, some smart, some foolish. But in that water, under that indifferent sky, I wasn't fighting for them anymore. I was fighting for the man next to me. I had lost one family in a fiery harbor. I would be damned before I lost another in the dark, cold sea.
They pulled us from the water hours later. A PBY Catalina, its hull a beautiful, impossible sight against the dawn sky. Boston's leg was saved, though he'd walk with a limp for the rest of his life. A limp he later called his souvenir from the South Pacific. We were sent back to Pearl, then eventually home. They called us heroes. They gave us medals, slapped us on the back, and bought us drinks. They celebrated. But walking down the streets of my hometown in Ohio felt like walking on a different planet. The grass was too green, the peace too loud. People talked about rationing and baseball and new cars, and all I could hear was the echo of explosions and Boston scream in that flooded compartment. My mother would set a plate of food in front of me, and I'd see the faces of the men who never got a last meal on the Arizona. I was home, but I was still at sea. I was drowning in the silence. The only one who understood was Boston. We were discharged about the same time. He showed up on my doorstep in Ohio one day, leaning on his cane, that old grin trying its best. "Figured you could use some decent food, Ohio. Your mom's cooking can't hold a candle in my ma's." He stayed for a week. We didn't talk much about the war. We didn't need to. We'd sit on the porch at night, listening to the crickets, and the silence between us was comfortable. It was a silence that held everything: the fear, the loss, the unbreakable bond forged in fire and water. One evening, he looked at me, his face serious for once. "They keep saying we won, Eddie," he said, his voice quiet. "Did we? I just feel tired." I knew exactly what he meant. Victory wasn't a flag on an island or a treaty on a battleship, not for us. Victory was something smaller, more personal. It was the simple, monumental fact that we were sitting on this porch alive, that I could hear him complain about the lack of good Italian bread in the Midwest, that he was here to complain. He went back to Boston, to his family's bakery. I stayed in Ohio, found a job, built a life, a good life by all accounts. But every December 7th, I'd get a phone call. No hello, just the voice saying, "Remember the paint, Eddie?" And I'd say, "And the coffee." Then we'd talk about the weather, or his kids, or my job. That was our memorial, not for the ships or the flag, but for the boys we were. They teach you in the Navy that a ship is made of steel. They're wrong. A ship is made of men. Their laughter in the mess deck, their snores in the bunks, their sweat on the guns. The Arizona is still made of her men, resting in the harbor. The Castellan is made of her crew, scattered across America, growing old. The war never ends for the ones who fought it. It just becomes a part of you, a deep and permanent current in your soul. You learn to navigate it. Some days are calm. Others, the storm rises without warning. But you learn to ride it out. I look at my children, my grandchildren, and I see the world we fought for. A world of peace they take for granted. And I'm glad for that. My war was fought so theirs could be a story in the history book, and not a nightmare they live every day. So did we win? I look at the life I've built. I listen to Boston's laughter on the phone, and I think of the men we left behind. Victory isn't a single moment. It's the quiet act of remembrance. It's the weight of a memory you carry so others don't have to.
It's the profound, bittersweet knowledge that the most important battle I ever fought wasn't for a patch of ocean or an island, but for the soul of a loudmouth kid from Boston. And in doing so, I managed to save a little piece of my own.